Okay, so today we'll be looking at relative clauses. Okay, and I guess one of the most important things that you should know is that remember that relative clauses, okay, clauses means a part of a sentence. Okay, it's got a subject and a verb. All right, so and you'll see when we use it. Okay, so let's have a look at some of our examples. We've got the first example here that says this is the motorbike that was used in the film The Motorcycle Diaries. And the second, Gail Bernal, is the actor who played Che in the film. All right. So in this case, we're talking about if we have a look at the words that are underlined, here we can see that we have relative clauses. Okay. It's got a subject, it's got a verb, subject, verb. Okay. And let's have a look at the other two. The film whose theme song won an Oscar is based on the motorbike journey Che made, and he won £30,000, which he gave to the Cuban Health Service. Okay, so here we've got two more examples of relative clauses. As you can see, at least at first sight, the difference between the ones in this column and here is that we've got commas. All right. So what is the relative clause? A relative clause. The main purpose is to give information about the subject. Okay. Whether that information is essential or not is where we define if it's a defining relative clause or if it's a non-defining relative clause. All right. Defining relative clauses gives important information about the subject and it helps us identify the subject, whereas the non-defining gives information about the subject and is not but it's not essential. So if we look at the first examples, here we've got this is the motorbike. Which motorbike are we talking about? The one that was used in the film The Motorcycle Diaries. Okay? And so this is important information. Without this information, we wouldn't know what we're talking about. Okay? Whereas the film whose theme song won an Oscar is based on the motorbike journey Che made. This is extra information about the film, but we know which film it is because it's the film that was based on a motorbike journey Che made. So the relative clauses gives us extra information, and whereas the defining relative clauses gives us essential information to help us identify the subject and what it is or who it is that we're talking about, whereas the non-defining just gives us extra information about the subject. Okay? So, how do we form it? The defining, we have the subject, this is a motorbike, the relative pronoun, which is what we'll be looking at in a second, so in this case is that, and then the verb. In this case, we have, as you can see, the past simple, passive voice in past simple tense. The tenses do not change. It obeys all the rules that they usually do. Whereas the non-defining, you can see the subject. And here we've got commas, okay? So that's the first two examples that we can see here, okay? The main differences between the defining and non-defining is that at first sight we have also the commas. Okay, so let's have a look now at the relative pronouns. Remember, the relative pronoun will go between the subject and the verb, okay? And the choice of relative pronouns will depend on the subject. So if we're talking about a person, we use who or that. If we're talking about ownership, for example, the one where we have the film whose theme song won an Oscar, the theme song of the film, okay? So we're talking about ownership here. We use whose. If we're talking about things, we use which or that. And when we talk about place, we use where. Okay? So these always depend on the subject. Okay? The use of who or that in defining relative clauses is up to you. It's your choice. You have more variety. Whereas in non-defining, remember non-defining were the ones with the commas. Okay? So, for example, you've got here the film whose theme song won an Oscar, he won £30,000, which he gave. These cases we cannot have that, okay? So we can only use who or which, that with a comma, is never an option. Okay, so up to here is the basics of relative clauses, okay, with the difference between defining and non-defining. And those of you who feel a bit more adventurous, there are moments where you can omit the relative pronoun. So for example, let's have a look at the first here. The film that I saw last night was fantastic. Or the film I saw last night was fantastic. We omitted the pronoun that and why? Because the subject in the main clause, the film was fantastic, okay, and the subject in the relative clause, I saw last night, is different. I does not refer to the film. All right. So when we have this in the main clause and in the relative clause different subjects, we can omit the relative pronoun. Okay. This is only when the subjects are different. Okay. Whereas Julie is the woman who works with me. Who works with you? Julia. The subject of the main clause is Julia. The subject of the relative clause is who works with me. Who's the person we're talking about? We're talking about Julia. In this case, it's the same. Okay? So this is the reason why the relative pronoun cannot be omitted. All right? So I hope this was clear for you. Have a go at some of the exercises you have below. And well, continue working in your workbooks also, and I'll see you next time.